Okay, I propose to start the meeting, it being 4 minutes past 10. I would like to begin by welcoming members and officers and those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would ask all members of the board who have video cameras to keep their video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raise hand function on the right-hand side of their screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again. I would ask for your patience if we run into technical problems, and should this occur, I will declare an adjournment whilst the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Fine, I will turn to the items on the agenda. And Sophie, are there any reports of apologies for absence?
Apologies for absence were received from Val Lim.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? We'll take that as no and move on. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of November as a correct record. If members wish to raise anything relating to the confidential part of the meeting, I suggest we discuss them once we are in confidential session at the end of the meeting. Please note that the comments made are purely about questioning the accuracy of the minutes only. So, Barry, Councillor Seif, are there any issues you have with the accuracy of those minutes?
No issues on my part.
Thank you very much.
Just to confirm, none from me.
Thank you, and there were none from myself. On that basis, the recommendation to approve the minutes is carried. We have an updated action log in the published papers. Are there any questions on that action log?
None that will not be dealt with during the course of the meeting, I think. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm of a similar mind.
Okay. So we will take the action log as noted. Now, we now have the minutes of the Pension Fund Committee, which we're being asked to note. Again, these have confidential elements, so if you have any comments on them, we will take that after item 11 when the press and public have been excluded.
I'm sorry, can I just ask, I mean, have we had them in the past? We possibly have, but I just wonder what we can do with them. We weren't present at those meetings, and well, some of us weren't at any rate, and there's not a lot we can say about them. Anyway, no comments.
Okay. there are matters that are reported in them which you may want to raise. But Barry?
I just wanted to, yeah, I probably would want to discuss I've got some points about the minutes, so I guess we have to wait till
Okay.
item 11.
We will come back then to them after item 11. And the same applies to the pension investment subcommittee. Barry or Councillor Seif, do we need to come back to those as well? Or are you happy to note those now?
I had one comment, but actually I'm just happy to note it.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take those as noted. My apologies, I'm trying to find the next item. And the next item is the annual report of the fund. And that is one for Fiona to take us through quickly, I believe.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. So the report covers the audit plan, the final annual report and statement of accounts, and the audit results report for 22-23. I won't spend too long on the audit plan as the audit has now been completed, but it covers the key risks, which are the same as last year. So misstatements due to fraud and error, the unusual investments, so Cambridge and Counties Bank, valuation of level 2 and level 3 investments, management override of controls, and the actuarial present value of promised retirement benefit. The plan also covers a materiality level set. So these based on 1% of the assets at 42 million. And EY will report any audit differences over 2.1 million. In section 3.4 of the report, the audit has been completed. On the accounts, the annual report and statement of accounts have both been reviewed by the Audit and Accounts Committee and Pension Committee and have been approved by both committees. The results report shows that the accounts are clear of material and immaterial misstatements. EY's audit opinion says that the accounts are a true and fair view of the financial transactions and they were properly prepared in the accordance of the Code of Practice. There were two corrected differences. One was for Cambridge and Counties Bank. We didn't receive the valuation report in time before the council had to publish the accounts. So there was an adjustment from the prior to the current year valuation of a decrease of 15.7 million. I think we received the report the day after we had to publish, which is a little bit annoying, but and then the standard level 3 valuation adjustment, which was 12.8 million. It's worth noting that it's Ernst & Young's final year doing our audit and KPMG are our new auditors for 23-24. Are there any questions on the three reports?
Thank you, Fiona. Barry.
Just wanted to want it noted and sort of commented. Sorry, I've gone past the bit I put notes. Is to do. I'll try and find it again. Okay, yeah. So it is page 136. It's about climate change. I just made the comment that I know it's probably an academic exercise, but the fact that you're showing the effect of 3 degrees and 4 degrees global warming. I would argue that that would be an extinction event. So it's back to that comment that you can't, if there is no planet, then you can't draw on your pension.
Very true. So this report was produced by Mercer's, but I will raise that to them.
I think I might have a second point. The other note. I know I can't find it. I'll come back.
Okay. Councillor Seif.
Yes, it's not really a comment on the report per se, because it was discussed in audit and accounts, at which I was present, and it was also discussed in full council. So I think everybody has accepted this report, but it's probably worth pointing out to this committee that a discussion was held over the, if you like, valuation of the excess valuation of the investments, and so that we are, I'm sorry, I haven't got it in front of me now, but about 165% funded, if I'm correct. And there was a discussion whether we should be reducing, the council should be reducing its contributions so that money could be used for other purposes. It's a very serious discussion and probably should be had, but I think everybody agreed, or at least the majority agreed, that these valuations can indeed fall as much as they rise, and therefore it will be imprudent to reduce our contributions at this stage until we can be absolutely sure that there is a permanent increase, and everything is fully funded at the moment, but that it's a permanent increase, which could then justify that reduction in contributions. I think that was the essence of quite a bit of a heated discussion over this subject.
That was a discussion in council.
It was a discussion in council, although fairly brief, but in audit and accounts as well.
Yeah. So it's probably worth noting that the whole pension fund is 165% fully funded, but each employer will be their own level of funded as well. So I don't have the figures on me for the Cambridgeshire County Council on how well they're funded, but I don't know if Mark or Corey are having a discussion with the employers about contribution rate.
Thank you very much. Councillor King, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. And first of all, just wanted to apologise for being late. I had a bit of trouble getting in this morning, but I am here now, and it's very nice to see you all. And may I take this opportunity to just wish everybody a very happy 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry, your hand is still up.
Yeah, I found the comment that I was going to make earlier that I couldn't find. So it's related to what Councillor Seif was talking about. It was very much at the governance conference I attended. It was very much sort of drummed into us that even though the report says 125% funded, or I believe we're now 165% funded, you should never be complacent, because that's just a mathematical formula. It might not actually be reality. You should always err on the side of prudency.
Understood. Mark, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. And indeed around what was discussed, I guess, within the administrative authority itself in terms of the council. I mean, there are very, very limited justifications and ability for contribution rates to be changed during the intervaluation period. So, you know, it's a very much a long-term funding goal of over 20 years. the council is stabilised in terms of rate, which means in the good times it goes down slower than it does if it wasn't stabilised, but in the bad times it goes up slower than if it was. So that's a quid pro quo effectively. But liability values have driven that funding level. It's not changes in asset value per se. It's been the manner in which the liabilities are changed, and they can change and they can impact the funding level by over 10% in one quarter. December was, I think December was quite difficult for gilts, so there may, or sorry, would have been quite difficult from a fund perspective for liabilities, but we'll see how that plays out, obviously through the quarterly performance update. But yeah, just to say, we're very aware that employers might want to challenge it, but they will have to justify under the regulations what part of the regulations they are challenging that rate. And I think, yeah, movement in asset value certainly wouldn't be a justification. It's also been clarified that actually for a local authority, even in the issue of a section 114 notice wouldn't be considered a change in covenant because they are a tax raising body. So there's been lots of discussion nationally around this as well, but I'll leave it there and just leave you with the thought that basically it can be challenged, but there has to be a very clear mechanism linked to the regulations as to why that rate's being challenged between valuations.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, following on from what Mark has just said, it occurred to me that it might be an idea for his comments to be included in a brief email to be circulated to all councillors, so they're clear about what we can and can't do and what is prudent to do and not do, because I can't see it doing any harm, and I think it could be quite a useful thing just to clarify some of the processes that are involved. Thank you.
If I could just come back in on that, I mean, if we were to do anything like that, that would be obviously with Michael Hudson's authority, who's the treasurer to the fund and the Section 151 officer. So we can certainly mention that you've raised that point, Councillor King, and obviously seek his thoughts on that. If we did it, we would get professional advice in terms of the wording of that communication.
I would thoroughly support that, and I think obviously we need to talk this over with the pension committee as well to make sure that they would support such an initiative. But I would like us to explore that if that's acceptable to you, Chairman.
Sorry, you're on mute, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm happy to raise that with the chair of the pensions committee, and we'll take that as an action. And we'll report back at the next meeting anything what happens to that. Thank you. Any more questions on the annual report and statement of the accounts? See none. So Fiona, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have been asked to note the report, and that is we have done. Now, Michelle, you asked if you are still with us. We have the administration performance report.
Thank you. Yes, I am indeed. I did briefly try and put my camera back on, and it did skew everything, so I won't put it on right yet. I might try in a little while. If not, I might try and change devices completely. But for the moment, are you okay hearing me? Okay, just to check before I carry on.
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, with the administration report, just kind of two key areas mainly to focus on this time, and both of those around the KPIs. So we've obviously got the standard KPIs and the customer service journey KPIs that we've been reporting to you. So looking at the pension service KPIs first, really just some additional comments around those. So I just wanted to kind of update you on the kind of path we've been on in the last few months and how things have progressed since our last meeting. So in December, we asked the committee to agree an increase from 5 working days to 10 working days for the retirement benefits from active employment KPI. And as you may recall, over the last few months that we've been reporting KPIs, that's been one in particular that we've been struggling to meet the targets on. And this has been for several factors over the period, predominantly to do with training and inexperience within the team. We also then had McLeod and the additional work associated with that. And there's also been some periods of sickness and maternity leave as well. So what we were kind of seeing in ways of, because the KPI was quite tight, it was involving the whole process, and some undesirable behaviours were starting to slip in. Because if you can imagine, we have, you know, the actual individual processing the benefit. You then have the checker double checking that benefit. If that's all okay, it's not too bad. But if for any reason there's any recalculations that need to be done, that obviously needs more time for the recalculation to be done. It then needs to go back to the checker and be approved. So obviously that's where that 5 days was becoming quite tight. And what it was meaning was actually some of the training and the development associated with some of those redos of calculations was being missed. So what we did is we had a look across the industry and compared ourselves against SITFA benchmarking. And what we took away from that was actually that most funds were actually operating to 15 working days on that particular KPI. And we also undertook some analysis in October about how far over the 5 working days we actually were. And this equated to 6.6 days. So on that basis, with those 2 pieces of information, we felt it, you know, a reasonable proposal to put the 10 days forward. We didn't want to go as far as the 15, but we felt that 10 days would be more appropriate. And the committee did agree with that. So from January, there has been a relaxation on that one. In addition, within the operations team themselves, they've had a slight restructure within the team to allow for more flexibility within the checking space. So we're hoping from changing from 4 teams to 2 teams, there's extra coverage across the team leader space there, and obviously allows for more multi-skilling in those teams. So the expectation is that from January we will start to see things improve. There is just one slight caveat at the moment, and we're not sure obviously what those statistics will look like, but we have had quite a high rate of sickness in January as well. So we'll just have to monitor that KPI going forward. But in theory, all being well, and when we're fully resourced, we do believe that that will be a positive change on that KPI. So moving on to the customer journey KPIs, we've obviously been bringing developments to you as and when they're ready. So as you'll see from the appendix, we've managed to provide some more information in there to you. There's quite a lot of information for this first time round because there's several months that we're catching up on, but that'll be our business as usual as we go forward. But what you'll see from the table, and just to explain about where we are, some of the more straightforward indicators have been easier to develop just because they have less contact points and there's some automated processes in there. So things like starters and leavers, where we're literally just waiting on an employer to give us some information that then triggers a process where an automated letter is sent. So those ones we've obviously got well underway now, and we can report on those. The difficulty comes when we look at the more complex KPIs. So for example, in the retirement space, so when you're looking at an active retirement, for example, you're gathering information from multiple sources. It could be the employer, it could be the payroll provider, it could be the member. And within those multiple contact points, there's obviously multiple pieces of information. So it just gets a lot more complex to actually analyse what we're looking at. And so, for example, we could get a leaving certificate from an employer. So we kind of tick that off as received. And then 2 days later, actually, we're not happy with that at all. We need to go back and ask for some more information. So that takes that back out of that cycle again. So bearing in mind those complexities, we are doing some further analysis on the more complex ones to make sure that when we do bring the results to you, we can absolutely say, these are the high level results, whatever that may be, 60%, from the external point of view. However, we can give you the additional detail as where these cases have fallen down. And the long-term goal in particular is with the employers. So anywhere where we start to see systemic issues with employers not sending us information on time is obviously there where we can really start to make a difference in the customer journey. So yes, so for the meeting, we should hopefully have a bit more detail on those ones for you. And just to comment the report, especially as under the IDP cases, sorry, just down, bear with me. So yeah, firstly is an apology. The table has got the incorrect heading on it, so I do apologise for that. All of these ones in 8.3 are all relating to stage 1. And the second comment on that is about the second IDRP case that has been sent out now. So that one has been sent on the deadline. And the only other comment I'd like to make on the report is about the overpayment in section 10, just to confirm that the invoice has been paid, so there's no outstanding action on that one. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Can I just ask members to note that any questions on Appendix 4 are confidential. Councillor Seif.
Yes, thank you very much. I've got some questions, although some of them actually been answered now by Michelle. But I just want to start by saying, as Councillor King-Simon will be able to confirm, that I was asked to present our report of this board to full council. And of course, it was a bit odd because obviously I hadn't joined this committee until the end of March, and we were reporting up to the end of March. However, I just for the record commended the team on an impressive amount of work, given the complexity and volume of work and transactions that they had to progress. So, it's not surprising that we miss a few KPIs here and there. I didn't comment on that. I just said it was. I was very impressed with the work of the team, which I hope will, as it were, not soften any questions, but just put them into context. What I wanted to ask was that you do tell us that there were 6 complaints raised informally. I assume that they were to do with the missed KPIs, and particularly the first ones. And I just wondered how they've been dealt with, or were they not related to those KPIs at all? Clearly, they're very important that we set KPIs that are realistic. And, obviously, we've now moved the 5-day to 10 days. That's very, very important. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up because we're trying to do something that is very difficult or almost impossible, and suffering all the usual problems of sickness and so forth, and the need to recruit and train. You've dealt with the recovery of the overpayment and the fact that it's been paid, because it's one thing to issue an invoice, another one to get it paid. But I also wanted to ask about whether there's been an increase in the number of cases you've had to deal with under the McLeod remedy. You were going to, I think, reassess the financial impacts. I think we brought this up in the minutes last time, and that's what I was referring to when I said it will come up during the course of our discussions. I know that all the government statements on McLeod haven't been quite finalised yet, but I just wonder what the status of that and whether you can still confirm that there's been no adverse financial impact or it's been not material. I think that'll do for the moment.
Thank you. So picking up on the first point, the 6 complaints that were dealt with in the period, I'll have to circulate something to the board outside of the meeting if that's okay. There's 2 different teams that deal with the informal stage, and then whether they go through to IDRP is a separate process, a separate stage. So I'll double check to see what the correlation was between any of those, if any, and obviously what the type of complaints were for those ones. In terms of McLeod, so yeah, in terms of workload, absolutely has had an impact, and obviously the number of cases that we need to look at. At the moment, we're still trying to establish actually the numbers in scope, because we've got obviously everything that we're holding on the system, but there's some extra complexities, especially around previous service, public sector service elsewhere. So there needs to be an exercise to be undertaken. We're just waiting on some national guidance, because obviously it'd be very more pragmatic for all funds to kind of take the same approach to kind of trying to find out this information. For new cases going forward, we are asking on our forms whether they've got, you know, previous service, but it's really the remedy section that we're kind of it's a bit of an unknown at the moment, but yes, there will be an impact. Right. The financial impact, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say you're up to 18,000 when we last met.
Yes.
Yeah,
so they were the original, the original figures. So obviously that's what was calculated. I think probably a meeting or so ago. Obviously that number is likely to go up when we, you know, more people come into scope. What the actual impact of that will be is obviously remains unknown in terms of volume and in terms of financial impact. But we do know obviously previously with financial impact is likely to be very minimal for individuals and indeed for the fund as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Barry, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make comment on so it'll be page 232, section on non-material breaches about the refund of contributions. I feel, have you got a feel for when the government might actually change the legislation? I feel that this same explanation that legislation will be amended to remove the 5-year requirement. I feel it's been on this report forever and a day.
No, I would agree with that. And all I can really say is it is one area that is asked about with DLUC to see kind of where it is on their agenda plan. And as far as I'm aware at the moment, it's priority is all I can kind of say on that. So it is still on the agenda plan, but not one of the key things that they'll be looking at in the next couple of months or so. So hopefully sometime this year, but a bit further down the line, we might hear something on that. And
the other thing I just wanted to raise, I just noted that Cross Keys Homes have ceased to be an employer in the scheme. I just wanted to check. I'm assuming they've gone into a different scheme, or their employees will be able to join a different scheme, because they're quite a big employer. That's all. That was my concern.
Yes, unfortunately we haven't got Corey on the call, and I don't know if Mark knows anything about that one. I don't particularly, but if Mark doesn't know, I can certainly circulate something round after the meeting just to confirm.
Well, only that obviously they've been winding down the active membership for some time, so it's from exposure for us, it's been a decrease in exposure. So they've obviously been, they will have to have alternative pension arrangements, obviously, for everybody. We don't get involved in that quite clearly. We deal with what they want to do regarding their admission. We don't advise them on contractual HR law matters. That's for them to seek their own advice. But obviously one outcome will be if there are any transfers, we will have to deal with that aspect.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Michelle? I don't see any. So thank you very much, Michelle. We've been asked to note the report, which we will do. Item 7 is the annual business plan update. Mark, are you happy to take this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. And I will, as always, mainly concentrate on the RAG status of each activity in the executive summary, mainly concentrating on the ambers, but I will just say something around the procurements at the top. So it's been an incredibly busy period for procurements, certainly for my senior staff. We really had to kind of spread ourselves across them to make sure we had the coverage. In terms of the outcomes, the benefits and governance is now concluded with a new supplier. So Hymans have taken over from Aon. That was a very competitive process, that particular procurement, it's fair to say. The actual services, we do have a chosen preferred supplier. I believe we're still in standstill. I haven't received confirmation that that's concluded. That was a competitive process with 2 suppliers bidding, including the incumbent. That's typical of the market. The most you can get is 4, but actuarial consultancy suppliers are incredibly choosy now, and they do very much look to see what the length of relationships before they decide to bid. That's something that we've noticed in the market, as have other funds. The legal services has concluded, and Squire Patton Boggs have been re-procured. And as you're aware, the software one was concluded some time ago. So we are through our 4 large in-year procurements, pleasingly, with good outcomes across the board. In terms of the ambers, the GMP rectification, I think I mentioned last time that I had toggled this. So we have a couple of people are working. I think very, very experienced individuals. They were needed elsewhere, particularly when the McLeod remedy started causing issues with casework in terms of speed and pace within business as usual. They are now back onto the guaranteed minimum pension project, and that will conclude in Q1. So a 1-quarter delay, effectively. Once those 2 individual experienced staff are free of that, then that gives us more flexibility in project work in the coming financial year. The McLeod is amber simply because the guidance is only coming out sometime soon, and therefore the whole project is delayed from where we thought it would be. But we'll re-profile that in the new business plan, because hopefully by then we will have that guidance as to the prioritisation. I was asked a question, how long will this take in committee at the last committee? I think it's a 2-year project probably, because I think it will involve multiple sweeps through. We will go through based on when people are in scope now. We clearly are going to have to contact everybody to see if they've got other public service pension rights at some point, using probably nationally agreed communications and processes. And that may bring some more people in scope. So we'll have to sweep through again and deal with those additional in-scope individuals. And then, of course, you've got the teachers' excess service aspect of this project as well, which I think we've talked about in LPP previously. Unprocessed leavers, we made good progress this year. We have slowed down since October, that's for sure. As of now, we are still moving in the right direction. It's amber because I think next year in particular is going to be incredibly pressurized for the team. I expect us to go in the right direction. The pace is the issue. the new business plan is likely to ask for a bit of additional resource, particularly around business as usual. That will help this particular activity. I'm very serious about wanting to get these numbers down to what I would consider sort of a workable baseline for the future. And the final one is the website. This was changed just before publication, actually, when we were informed that there was the outsourced contractor who is supporting the WNC digital team to develop the website. I think they ran into some resourcing issues around Christmas and the New Year, and therefore the last I understand from a week ago is that we're likely to complete the development in Q1, and the launch will be in Q2. So probably about a quarter-ish delay on that. Those are my comments on the business plan, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. And can I just confirm, when you talk Q1, you mean Q1 of the new financial year?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to double.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, we sort of an accountant. I work in financial years. I do apologise.
No problems. Just as long as we understand. Councillor Safe.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's possibly a very naive question, but I shall ask it just the same. The access development, as I understand it, is the pooling of basically a sort of government pool for the investments. Will this affect the work that we require from our actuarial consultants and indeed anybody else involved in those investment decisions if this is progressed and implemented? I mean, is that taken into account in the procurement of our new actuarial consultants?
So it doesn't impact directly the actuaries' work. It impacts the investment consultants' work, definitely, in the sense that if we're aiming to pool all assets, then effectively what it's doing is restricting the options available. But there again, the options available should be the best of the best. So the only time we don't have something to select from, if you like, within the pool, is when we're kind of changing our strategic needs, and the pool needs to put something in place for us. And the pool has proven that it is putting things in place for us, because it has recently done so for long lease property, and it is doing so for timberland. But I think you're right to raise, does it impact the advice that we're given, because it certainly has in investments, and it's as much a journey, I think, for the advisor as it is for us, for them to work with in the new environment, as it were.
Yeah. But in the context of the business plan itself, I mean, obviously we are hoping that we will get better or more productive or higher yielding investments overall, or more secure, etc., balance risk and reward, as it were. But I suppose my question was really about, does it save us some costs? And you imply that it does slightly.
We did produce something for the committee last year, which set out the savings and how we'd calculate those savings. We can pull that out and recirculate it to LPV members, because it gives an idea. It's certainly it's a very hard thing to assess, because in the meantime funds have changed what they're investing in, and most funds are moving more into non-listed, which have a higher fee base. However, the way we looked at it was, what would we have paid for these investments if we weren't pooled? So can we look through to see what the costs were prior to pooling for particular managers, for example? And we worked out what the pooling regime had delivered in terms of costs. There is another piece of work which was done, which informed the response to government on the consultation, which I think was shared with you. And that has some high level numbers in terms of how cost effective the pool is relative. It's looking at it in with a different lens. It's looking at it comparing the market more than specifically what could we as an LGPS fund have got. But I think that's another really useful way of looking at it.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. This is really just to congratulate Mark and his team that we have no reds. And you've satisfactorily explained the ambers, but I think that the fact there are no reds is cause for congratulations. So well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for reminding us of the good work that Councillor Seif reported as well to Council. So that's all great. If there are no other questions, then I'd like to recall that we've noted the business plan update. And Michelle, if you are still with us, the governance and compliance report.
Yes, thank you. So again, I'll just pull out the key detail from this report, which is mainly going to concentrate around cloud, as they're the two biggest projects we've got going on at the moment. So as you'll see in the report, there's some movement on dashboards now. Information has been started to be released nationally about some of the key activities. The draft connection guide and proposed stage connection date for public service pension schemes has been released. Still not currently in the public domain, but the dates are due to be published in spring 24. But what it does mean by funds having early oversight, we can obviously start to prepare on what we know is going to come into force very shortly. So we can now start to think about the actions that need to be taken and the decisions and things that we as a fund need to locally start concentrating on. So we, as a bit of context, obviously we originally had a project plan set up and then the dashboard programme halted the project, so that was kind of put on hold. We're now obviously in a position to pick that up again and look at what we had in our original project and reschedule some of the activities in there and pick those up as necessary. From a fund perspective, we have work streams in place to make sure that we're covering all the elements of the dashboard, which is actually quite a wide coverage. So many areas that we need to consider for dashboards on so many different levels. So we've obviously got the governance aspect of dashboards, what we need to do in terms of decision making, policies and guidelines, what procurements, especially in relation to the ISP, what routes are we going to take, and those kind of decisions. We've obviously got the legal implications about the actual connection dates and making sure we've registered to everything in a timely manner. Data protection elements, obviously making sure that we're covered on all data protection. And also to make sure that we're reviewing our privacy notices and we've got all that tied up nicely. The technical build itself, including the interaction for AVCs, again, that's something that's currently being looked at nationally to see if we can get a consensus on how that should work. Importantly, for our members, the communication around dashboards, we need to now start thinking about who needs to know what and when and how we can maximise our communications to make sure everybody's aware of the dashboard programme. Data readiness also, that's one that we've probably done a lot already in terms of tying that up with our data improvement plan. So we already do a lot of data cleansing, but there will be some additional work that we need to do there to be ready, and there'll also be making sure that the system can then support any decisions that we've made on matching rules and tolerances and that type of thing. And then once we get to kind of that point, we obviously think about the ongoing administration, about the maintenance and reporting and what we need to report and to who and when and those types of things. So in terms of the project itself, lots of different standards to adhere to. 5 separate standards that we need to consider and make sure that we're fully compliant with all of those. And the pension regulator obviously does have the power to issue compliance notice and penalties if we don't do that. So really important we start to manage this project now that we've got some key dates that we can start working to. The software provider are obviously really key in this as well. They're obviously working their end to make sure that the system's ready, but ultimately the responsibility sits with us to make sure that we're asking the right questions and making sure that they're doing everything that they should be, especially from a data GDPR point of view as well. So the pension regulator issued a checklist actually originally when dashboards came to light, and we have reported against that once already, but it was in quite the early stages before the pause. So the intention will be to the next meeting to bring an updated version of that checklist so that we can show you where we are in terms of the dashboard program and all the activities that we've undertaken to date. So moving on to McLeod, obviously we've touched on this already, but effectively from a fund perspective, cases from the 1st of October are largely now being treated as business as usual with just a few workarounds in place. And there's a project group for any McLeod queries. So any queries discussed at the project group, and then the software provider is fixing any issues that they're coming about in various as well. So that's kind of all under control and fairly successful from that point of view. Another really important point for you as the board to know is that all our disclosure requirements were met in December. So we used the most appropriate method depending on who we were communicating with for that. So emails, letters, member self-service and website were all used for that purpose. So the difficulty, and as we've kind of touched on previously, is more to do with the rectification for McLeod. So in October, DLUC circulated its draft prioritisation policy, which is due to materialise early 2024. Again, it's another area that funds have had an early opportunity to have sight of to see what's required to do that, and then the prioritisation principles will then feature in the strategy when DLUC release them. There's also the administration guidance as well, and this has been split into several stages, really just due to the complexities of the remedy itself. So stage 1 does include, as part of the prioritisation, but also communication, qualification, and a range of underpin calculations. So really where we are now is we're reviewing the guidance that we've had early sight of that's due to be released more publicly very shortly. And we're doing everything we can in terms of our record preparation. So just making sure that we've got everything as up to date as it can be. We'll then be obviously in a position to start looking at the Group 1 priorities within the project, moving forward with that, and then assess what we've got left to do with the rest of the tranches as well. So just a quick note really on investment reforms. I believe there was some training delivered from Ben's team, and in November DLUC published its response to the consultation, which largely, as we've kind of touched on, adopts the measures that the government originally consulted on. So really just to draw your attention that in the report under 5.2.4, the pathway to achieving those proposals are set out in there. And the only other thing I kind of just wanted to touch on, because it's come out very not so long ago, was the General Code of Practice. So actually it's so current that it wasn't in the original draft of this report, but then it was laid in Parliament, so I've managed to squeeze it in. But effectively the long-awaited General Code of Practice, which was originally going to be known as the Singular Code, has been laid in Parliament, due to come on 27th of March. So within the code, there's 5 main areas. Each of those areas will have multiple modules. Not all applicable to the LGPS, but obviously we need to go through that and make sure that we are picking out what's appropriate to us. So the release date of being the end of March obviously will line up very nicely for the 24-25 business planning for that year, and we'll start to bring you information on that. But what I am hoping is from April, we should be in a position to bring you the new areas of the code and highlight those to you, and maybe give you some initial thoughts on what we have deemed to be, either whether we think we're in a good position or whether there's any areas that we may need to further consider. It would be worth pointing out that most of the code is a consolidation of what's already in place. So we expect to be compliant on all those aspects. We've also started to do work on some of the additional areas, such as cyber resilience and scams. So we're not expecting massive amount of work to come out of this. The might be the odd thing that we need to look at. But what we will do is, once it's released, in conjunction with our advisors, we will make sure that we undertake the full compliance review. And then when we've done that, we'll obviously bring that back to you also. So that's all I kind of really wanted to say in the report. I'm happy to take questions, but after that point, I believe Barry's going to do an update from the governance conference that he attended last week as well. But if I do questions first and then hand over to Barry.
Councillor Seif.
Thank you very much. It may be that this is going to be covered a little bit later. First of all, a very comprehensive report once again. So not many questions, but I want to just explore a little bit about the implications of the Court of Appeal decision on the competence of for dealing with disputes of the Ombudsman, because I think this has probably got some very much wider implications right across all Ombudsman positions and their decisions and their ability to resolve disputes. The key question here, of course, is have we been affected by any of this, either in the recent past or indeed have we got any? I don't think we have any ongoing cases with the Ombudsman, but it's a pretty serious decision in the sense that costs for all sides will be going up if we have to take a dispute to the various chancery courts rather than use an ombudsman to resolve them. I think my recollection is that we've had, we even in the past year, had stage 2 disputes. I don't know whether they've got as far as the ombudsman, so perhaps you could enlighten me on that. And I have to confess I haven't read the determination, so I don't know what their reasoning for coming to the conclusions that they did, but it's quite clear that the ombudsman doesn't have that much power. He's going to try and be a mediator rather than an arbitrator.
Yes, so on the first point in terms of cases that get referred to the Ombudsman, we do have cases that we do refer to the Ombudsman. Some are overpayment cases, some will be, completely different areas. I'm aware of one at the moment, but you have to forgive me, I'm not sure which fund that is against, whether it's Cambridgeshire or not. That one will be one that will be affected by this when it gets to that point. Because as the ruling stands, it will have to go through that county court extra step from that point of view. So from a delay point of view, it's not ideal having to go through that extra step. In terms of knock-on effects wider than that, I must admit I don't know what the ramifications will be.
Can I come in there, please? Because this is the judgment was very much around where the fund required money from the individual, and it was the competence of the ombudsman to effectively force that individual to pay in accordance with what the payment plan which had been agreed in the decision. I don't think it's a question around the general competence of the ombudsman to reach a decision, and indeed it's always been the case that any fact of law can go on to a court. So when there have been cases where you know, a fund has reached a decision through stage 1 and 2, and then the ombudsman has agreed, and then it's gone to court, and indeed the regulations have then changed. So that's an avenue, a well-trodden avenue. This is very much around a bit of an admin issue of having an extra step if you want to get overpayments. Which is pretty, that's not very generally what decisions are around. Sometimes, for example, you know, like if you can imagine a mis-selling of a transfer, what the individual wants is the fund to pay money. So there are it's usually around overpayments where it's the individual being required to pay money, but a lot of disputes are around the individual wanting compensation for poor admin performance, you know, i.e. not processing things very quickly. If a decision that the individual has made, or sorry, is based on what the fund has done, has turned out not to be the best, they want compensation. So a lot of disputes are around the individual wanting money. Overpayments are around, clearly around where we're looking to get money back from the individual. So it's very, yeah, so it's quite limited in scope, I believe.
So you're really saying to us it was very, very specific.
It was specific. Yeah.
And that we are not more, because we haven't got many go with them. We may have one case that may be going to the ombudsman, but we're not exposed to the whole panoply of court procedures and costs.
No, not at all. And I mean, the reality of the ombudsman at the moment is, you know, we've seen some cases are taking 18 months to go through. And we sometimes don't get told for many, many months after it's been received by the ombudsman whether, you know, that it has been received. And then we're asked, obviously, for us to turn around a response to the ombudsman in a fairly short period. But then this next stage may take a number of further months. So there are resourcing issues with the ombudsman, certainly. But we will never have that many, because the only ones generally that can go to the ombudsman, unless it's early resolution, are cases which are, as you rightly pointed out, have gone through stage 2. And then, of course, there needs to be a very clear justification as to why that individual wants to take it to the ombudsman. You know, what has been decided that they disagree with.
Yeah. No, I also understand that it is, and has probably always been, open to any individual or organisation to challenge an ombudsman decision. It's pretty rare, and again would have to be justified. But this seemed, from the way it was presented to us here, that this also made it inevitable that it would be challenged. I mean, clearly a court would have to take notice of what an ombudsman has said, but nevertheless, you know, if it was general that the ombudsman could not make the final decision, then we could expect more of these cases. But we've got a limited number anyway that go to him, or the ombudsman office, not an him.
Yeah.
And so we're not.
The ombudsman did make it very clear as well that it's specifically talking about the enforcement element as well. So there shouldn't be a challenge on the decision. You know, the decision is fine. It's the enforcement of that decision as well, specifically, that the extra step is for.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Barry, you have a question.
Yeah, I was just going to make comment on the investment reforms, but I think it's more appropriate in the closed session when we talk about access. So if that's all right, we'll come back to it in the closed section.
I think that would be best, Barry, if we could.
Okay. I guess then now it's for me to do my update on the governance conference.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I always find this conference the most useful. I have been to other conferences, but this one specifically to do with governance, and you get all the sort of big players and movers attending. So I'll just run through what notes I've got here. So quite funny that we were just talking about the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman was the first person to give a presentation. A lot of it was to do with the fact that in the past, if a case was referred to the Ombudsman, there'd be quite a wait because he had so many cases and they weren't clearing them. But they've had a bit of a reorganisation and they're actually receiving less cases than they're actually clearing. So they're starting to make headway into their backlog. So that seemed quite really positive. It was discussed about the extra step. I think to do with the county court judgments just on the enforcement side. But yeah, that's just more got the impression it's more about being cautious and doing things properly. Then we had SAB and LGPC update. We had a video from the Minister Simon Hoare. He mentioned about merging of funds. We had a brief explanation of what the LGPC do. Apparently, it's a committee of councillors representing local authorities. And it covers all of the UK. And now they've got a new Labour chair because it's to do with balance of power. There's more Labour councils throughout the UK, so they've got a new Labour chair. They provide technical expertise and offer training. That they were saying the priorities now, and we've been talking about it, is the McLeod remedy, pensions dashboards, lifetime allowance. And a lot of talk about new qualifications for people who work in pensions. So level 2 and level 3 qualifications. So apparently they're developing those. Yeah, and then we had a legal update. Nothing really much to report on the legal update other than the fact that the general code is out. And at the time, the lawyer who was giving the presentation said it was so she hadn't even had a chance to digest it all. It was so recently out. Yeah, and again, she mentioned about dashboards and to be mindful of that. Apparently, DWP had a review of the transfer regulations. And it's been flagged to Money Helper as legislation is poor and it's causing delays. Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of, at the conference, there was a lot of talk about cyber security. And again, the lawyer kept highlighting the importance that we're mindful of cyber security. Yeah, and she mentioned changes to lifetime allowance. That should be a priority. And then the mansion house proposals, which is what I'll probably be discussing in our closed session when we talk about access. And then day 2, we had someone from DLUC give an update, effectively explain what they do, pretty much stated similar things to what the SAB update was. about the cloud remedy, lifetime allowance, technical regulations all being a priority. And apparently a GAD review of funds valuations due to be published in the summer, autumn. And there'll be an engagement phase first half of 2024. And then we had, it was all very top secret, we actually had someone from the National Cybersecurity Centre talking about cyber security. We weren't allowed to photograph them, or so I just took some basic notes. But it was basically, again, to be aware of the consequences of any sort of data breaches, and to do everything that you can to make sure your fund is cyber secure. They did suggest that board members, committee members, it was kind of a little bit of a homework exercise, look at what passwords you use, whether you should be using 3 random words or 2-factor authentication. And yeah, there was a lot of, which I kind of agree with, there was a lot of talk, I think there's guidance coming out soon, about how pension committee members need to have the same expectation as pension board members when it comes to knowledge and skills. So it was very much, yeah, I mean, we're legally required to have a certain level of knowledge and skills, but the fact that pension committee members should be in line with that, I think, yeah, there is going to be some more guidance, possible legislation on that coming out. Okay, yeah, and that's all my update. But yeah, I do find these this particular conference really useful, especially on the networking side. So.
Thank you, Barry. Mark?
Yes, Chair. Thank you for that, Barry. If the board wishes, we do get a digest of conference highlights from Hyman's, and they've done a 4-page set of bullet points around each, if you like, around each session, which we could circulate if you wish, if that would be of use.
I think that would be a good idea, Mark. Yes,
okay.
Please.
No problem.
Councillor King?
Yes, I would agree with that, Chairman. If Mark could circulate that, that would be brilliant. And I just wanted to echo his thanks to Barry for the report. I had hoped to go to the conference, but unfortunately, I've had some health issues and I wasn't able to do it. But perhaps on another occasion, I will be able to. Thank you.
Can I just say a big thank you to Michelle. I have to say that having read your reports, I always feel very much on top of what's going on. And when I see stuff coming into my mailbox, I think, yeah, I knew that. So thank you very much, Michelle. We're being asked to note the governance and compliance report, and that we have done. The next item is not an item just to note. It's we are being asked to review and comment on the administration strategy, and Corey's gone off to America or something, hasn't he, Mark? So I think you're taking us on this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yes, I mean, Corey has held the pen on this and done an awful lot of work. We did seek professional advice from Aon, but we did do the drafting of this. The admin strategy is something we've had, gosh, it must be for about 10 years now. It's not a strategy that you have to have as a fund. It's one of those but it is clearly, bearing in mind it sets out how we administer the scheme and the relationship and responsibilities between us and the scheme employers in particular. and sets out, performance standards and escalation routes, and indeed if things go, wrong and we don't get information that we require, how we have the ability to charge for the additional work we undertake. You can see it's a really, really important strategy and one of our key ones. We have completely rewritten it. As you will see, normally when we go through to produce a report setting out what's changed, it's not that much in terms of what we set out, but clearly here we've set out literally every aspect of it has fundamentally changed. It's a lot longer document, as you'll see. You've got the current and new version in the pack, if you wish to compare. I think there are some areas where we've changed it more fundamentally, particularly around digital. So that's set out in section 2.9 of the report. I'm really looking at it from two fronts. One, we're trying to interact with our members in a more digital way. So obviously the start of that was digital annual benefit statements with the ability to opt out. But now when COVID hit, we started sending all information and communications when we're in a casework process, if we can, through member self-service. But equally, employers are now sending us information monthly through the iConnect platform, which is a hub where they load a file that gets automatically loaded onto our system and interacts with our system and creates levers for us to process and create starters for us to undertake processes on and things like that. It's an incredibly important part of what's changed. And we've gone into some detail in the report explaining why we're reducing the number of days for the receipt of that information. And this is so that both us and the employer can act in a timely manner. So on the employer side, so they definitely hit their auto-enrollment responsibilities. And for us, so we can deal with the communication that we need to do in connection with new employers and deal with leavers quickly. So that's really, really important. We've made some fundamental changes to the performance standards around what we're now calling, obviously, customer journey KPIs and what you see in the regular admin report. Previously in this document, we had just a couple of really critical processes where we were looking at the whole length of that process. We've now moved that to more akin to what you see in our customer journey KPIs. So that's again a fundamental change. A lot of the KPIs are pretty similar, if not the same as what they were before. The main work has been done in the body of the admin strategy. But yes, I would open it up to any comments you have. The process here is once we've received your comments and updated the document, it will go to the March Pensions Committee. At least that's the plan. It would then go out to consultation, importantly, and particularly scheme employers would have a view on some of the amendments, obviously, because it impacts them the most. Although ultimately, what we're trying to do is to deliver good quality service to the members. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor C.
Yes, thank you. Well, I have a confession to make, which is that I have not read this document. There were key parts of the agenda which I did read. I didn't read this partly because we get the documents a week before our meeting, and we have lots of other committee documents to read and other things to do. But it is a very important document, and I know that you would like us to approve it today, but I just wonder whether it will be in order if we can take this away and come back with either written comments or, well, we don't want to leave it to the next meeting, so comments back through the chairman. I've not.
Oh yes, sorry. And we actually had an LPB yesterday for Northamptonshire, and they asked a very similar question. So absolutely, if there are any comments, because it would be quite possible for you to have made a comment today and then thought of something else after the meeting. I think the critical thing is, yes, for us to understand what your views are, and if there are any areas that we do need to change or improve. I mean, ultimately, you are what we're looking is for your scrutiny and for that feedback. The approval itself is obviously the pensions committee. It may then go around in a loop again if there are substantial comments that come out of the consultation. That has happened in the past, because employers may raise something which makes us really fundamentally rethink about a particular aspect. So Chairman, I am happy to receive comments. I think it would be good if you could all, if you
coordinate them,
have oversight of what they are and are kind of agree in the same direction. But Chair, I'll leave that up to you to determine what you want to do.
Fine, thank you, Mark. Councillor Seif, I'm more than happy to act as a collation point for them. I'd say personally, didn't have very many. Barry.
I've got my comments now, but I actually have nothing really critical of it. I thought that the strategy was a very good document, a good explanation of the reason for some of the deadlines to be sort of reduced from the 10 working days after the end of a month to 7. Also, that it clearly sets out the expectations on both the employer and the admin side of things. So I thought it was an excellent document. So yeah, that's really my only sort of comment.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally echo Barry's comments, and I didn't find anything in there that that I really wish to comment on. So I'm very happy, though, for the process to work in the way that Councillor Seif requested. But unless something occurs to me, you won't be hearing from me. I think it's very good and well done again, Mark, and everybody else.
Thank you. I think I found one typo, and I have one question, which is that I thought I'd seen something that not all of the employers are on iConnect. I thought there was 2 that weren't. So how are you managing to get that on board, or what happens? Because this is dependent on their use of it.
We will. I mean, obviously, this gives us we're obviously much clearer on what our approach is, because we were much earlier in the journey the last time we did this. So the intention very much is that obviously we're setting out what our position is. I mean, ultimately, if we can have another avenue. There are means and ways of getting information to us which is not iConnect, because ultimately the most important thing is that we're able to administer the scheme for those employers, and there might be in isolation a reason why they haven't done it. I mean, in the past, for example, it's been where employers are changing their ERP system and they haven't wanted to change yet and produce the reports, because it's it can be quite a lengthy process to get the reporting out of a system only to redo it again. So there can be legitimate reasons why people don't use iConnect, but we're very clear on what we're doing. If ultimately it costs us more to have an alternative process for an isolated employer who, for whatever reason, can't use iConnect, then we would charge them, and this gives us the ability to charge them. We would still ensure we get the data, because the absolutely critical thing is they have to provide us the data, and producing an iConnect report is not an overnight thing. It can take months to get in place to get up and running accurately. So yeah, this has given us more leverage to deal with the employers who can't use iConnect or don't wish to. But we only have 2 across the whole fund, I think, so it's not a major problem.
I had assumed, and perhaps I'm incorrect, that those 2 are some of your very small perhaps less computer literate employers?
I know one was that I'm not, to be clear, I'm not actually sure what the second one is. If Corey had been here, he could have, well, in public session, he wouldn't have named them quite clearly. But I think you're right. At least one of them is tiny. Yes.
Okay, but the strategy will give you a management lever to handle those
Yeah.
employers. Great, excellent. Well, I will reread it, but at the moment, I say I think there's one typo, but it's otherwise an excellent document. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Seif, over to you.
Thank you. I'll try and do it within the next week or so. And
that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We have reviewed and commented on this, and we are now just confirming the agenda plan, so we have mainly standing items for our next meeting: pre-scrutiny on communications, post-scrutiny on AVC. And I guess some of the reports from Michelle will be perhaps extensive as well. Any comments on the agenda plan?
Just one comment from me. Obviously, we've kind of, as you rightly say, mainly populated with the standing items in there. We're currently looking at the activities for next year's business planning. So obviously, once they're fully formulated and agreed, that will help drive the agenda as well. So hopefully by the next meeting, it should be fuller for the year with everything that we've got planned.
Great, thank you very much. And I would guess on the 28th of June, we'll have the election of chair and vice chair. The usual item that has been lost on occasions. There are no other questions on the agenda plan. We'll now move to the items for which it's necessary to exclude the press and public. So do members agree to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the agenda contains exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A, the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, and that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed, information relating to the financial business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Councillor King.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to support this for agenda item 12, but I would just like some clarity as to why the risk register is an exempt item, because I couldn't see anything in there that was sensitive. So could I have a little bit of further detail on that? But agenda item 12, very happy to support.
Yeah, so I can pick that up. So with the risk register, the current arrangement we've got at the moment is we're publishing the executive summary, but actually the risk register itself, we've put into confidential session for the last few meetings. The main reason was the ongoing activity around cyber resilience. So because we've got 2 activities in there that are quite heavily invested in activities that we were undertaking, we just felt it to be more prudent really in the public space that actually some of the things that we're working on we may not want the wider public to know. So we felt that it was beneficial to keep it confidential at this stage.
Thank you, Chairman. I always start from the position that things should not be exempt unless there's a good reason for that. And I do just wonder if on future occasions we couldn't do something about not having an exempt risk register. I hear what Michelle says, so I'm happy to support that on this occasion, but perhaps this is worth revisiting, I think. Thank you.